Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a new edition of True Crime with the Sarge. I'm your host, Joseph Giacalone, and tonight we have a very special guest with us, William Fleisher. He is a former police officer from the Philadelphia Police Department, former FBI agent, and he was also the Deputy Special Agent in charge of U.S. Customs and co-founder of the Vidocq Society. I mean, this man has got a hell of a resume, and he also helped push this case forward. Joseph Augustus Zarelli, formerly known as the Boy in the Box. Tonight's part three of this case. William, thanks for joining us and giving us some of your time tonight.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. I'm glad to be here and be on your show.
Sure. I mean, so this is kind of exciting because we rarely get a chance to speak to people who are actually involved behind the scenes kind of thing. I want to get into a whole bunch of things tonight, but we're going to first start off with, the Joseph Augustus Zarelli case, and then I also want to learn about how the Vidocq Society, always how it came about. So if I get off the tangent, whatever, I just make sure we do that before the end of the show. So
Okay.
tell us, so tell us the first time you ever heard about the Boy in the Box case.
Uh, Ironically, my mother took me after school. I was about 12 or 13 years old, shopping with her. And we went to what was then the Penn Fruit Company supermarket on City Line Avenue. It's right on the border of Philadelphia and the Montgomery County. And she walked in the store, and like any other 13, I was dilly dallying, taking my time. I walked up there. Had gone in, and in the window there was a poster, it's almost like a wanted poster, but it wasn't a poster looking for a fugitive or anything of that nature, bank robber. It was looking for who is this little boy, and I didn't know at the time. He was found nude, but detectives had dressed him up. One of the detectives' sons' clothes fit him, and they put him up in a pose like they used to do in the Civil War when they did these death photo poses. When photography was just starting to come to its to light for general use, they had these portraits, funeral portraits. They put him in a chair, and of course he looked. He wasn't. He was in situ. He looked like he was just found, except for the clothes. And I was shocked. He was obviously dead. I could read. It said he was found dead. And in a place called Fox Chase, which I didn't know, even though I'm a Philadelphian. It's a part of the city, the far northeast. And that face just stuck me in my head for all those years. Until in 1998, into the office walks a friend of mine, a reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer and Daily News, and an author. And says, "Bill, I need your help." I said, "What's that?" I'm writing a book called the Ron Avery was his name, by the way, and he's still with us, thank God. And I'm looking for. It's called Philadelphia City of Mayhem. Mayhem. That was it. City of Mayhem. And he was writing about 4, 5, 6, 8 cases that were notorious in Philadelphia. And he was looking for this guy named Seymour Levin. Seymour Levin had lured. He was the boogeyman for all the kids in my neighborhood. He was like the boogeyman. Their mother said, "Be careful, Seymour Levin will get you." But he had been arrested after inviting a neighbor kid, and he was about 16, 17 years old himself, and on the ploy of showing him his new chemistry set. When he got him in his house, he killed him and chopped him up. And he says, "Bill, I hear he's just got out of prison after all those years, and he's living somewhere in North Jersey with a sister. You think you can help me find them? I want to go talk to them." I said, "Sure." I turn around to my trusty databases. This is when I was a PI. I was retired from the government. And I found him in about 5 minutes. And then he says to me, "You ever hear of the Boy in the Box?" I said, the boy in the box. I'm looking at him right in my head. I see him. What about the boy in the box? He said, I'm going to write about the boy in the box. So I'm working with Detective Tom Augustine, who since left us, sadly. And the case has never been closed. And it might be a good case to present to the Vidocq Society. Would you be interested? I said, absolutely. I remember that case. I told him the story like I just told you and your audience about seeing him and being shocked. The only dead person I ever saw, a young kid. I've seen, in the war movies, soldiers laying, newsreels laying on the beach, Omaha Beach, etc. But I never saw a dead child, and it was shocking. And things that shock you get buried in your amygdala for life. And when he mentioned the name again, boom, saw the photo, saw like I was looking at it that day, so many years ago. So we did it. We made a presentation at the him and Tom Augustine, the detective, at the Vidocq Society, and we decided that we were going to help. We were going to form a group of members, and we were going to work out of our offices in Philadelphia. And the best way to go over code, you're a detective, is to get all the files, every interview, every piece of paper was ever connected evidence to the file, and start working on it. And the team was going to be Bill Kelly. Bill Kelly was the fingerprint analyst for the police department back in the day, who went around and took the footprint of what we knew as the boy at the time,
Mhm.
and went to all the hospitals, looked for a birth record that matched the footprint. And it has been his quest over the years. Joe McGillen, he worked for the medical examiner's investigator. He picked up the case. He left us too. He picked up the case with which Remington Bristol, who was the first investigator at the medical examiner's case, who did a hell of a, left no stone unturned. Could not find anything. And Tom brought all the evidence over to the office. Excuse me, I have a hair from my hair. I'm sorry, Joe, but
I get the same
you
problem all
get
the
the
time.
same
Don't worry
problem.
about
A
it.
hair comes, and this is mine. People say I'm wearing a toque. Don't ever wear a toque. Look good. You look like Kojak. But anyway, they sometimes drop in my eye. So we're sitting there on a Saturday. Kelly, McGillen, Fleisher, and Tom Augustine going through the files from the first day one. And ironically, the first couple 49s, which are police reports, indicate that they got a call up on Susquehanna Road that there was maybe a doll in a box. And this box was, the guy who made the call was anonymous, up and gave the location. And one of the first officers on the scene goes up there and looks and sees it's a dead body. Calls it in. Who comes up next? Captain Fleisher and his driver, Maurice Fleisher, and his driver, Sam Weinstein, who was a friend of mine for 40 years from the police department. And he was an old-time detective. I describe him as a man with a velvet fist and an iron glove, tough as nails, but has a heart of gold, as opposed to a guy that's had a heart of gold and is rotten inside, tough and mean. He's a dear friend of mine, passed also. Excuse me. So I call him up. I say, Sam, do you remember the boy in the box? Said, yeah, I remember. So I'm looking at reports, and I brought him up to speed. And I said, you were the second officer in the scene? Yeah, it was Maury Fleischer. He said, I said, they found them in a Sears box? He said, no, it was a Penny's box. And he started to send like he was still there reporting from the scene. He knew every little fact, everything. I said, we got a team forming up with Vidocq. Why don't you come join us? And he joined the team. And that's how we got back into the investigation. with the police department.
Now, Joseph was exhumed 2 times, correct?
Correct. First time is when we got back on the case. We formed a team. DEA was just starting to shine, like the old photography, crime scene photography in the 1800s. You know, the mugshots of the late 1800s. DNA was coming to light. They could do a lot with DNA, but not that much. You know, they can eliminate people. They could. It wasn't where it is to state of the art today, but it was an idea we had, and we agreed that we ought to have the body exhumed. He was in Potter's Field, the only grave with a gravestone. America's on. It was a God bless his unknown child, and we asked Tom, how do we get exhumation order? So he said, I'll go to DA's office and we'll try to get an exhumation order. And while we're sitting around, Sam says, well, why don't we take this opportunity to make him something, make him a symbol of all these kids that we can't identify or are unknown. So that's where the idea of American's unknown child came to be. So I called up Tommy. I told him Augustine what we intended to do. He said, "Fine." I said, "But we want to move him to a nice cemetery out of that Potter's Field, where sadly the detritus of society is buried. You know, we want to move him someplace nice. How can you move it? We'll pay for the plot. We'll pay for everything." The Vidocq Society. And he said, "Well, I don't know. Call up Craig Mann." Craig Mann had Mann Funeral Home in Philadelphia. His father buried him pro bono, the original ceremony back in the day when they reinterred him. So I called him up, introduced myself, told him who I was, told him what I was seeking. How do you get somebody transferred when they were exhumed, you know, if you're not family? He says, have them put it in a court order. I said, could you find us, we're going to pay for it, the Vidocq, could you find us a nice cemetery where we can move them, to have them moved to? He said, yeah, and I will move them pro bono for you. I'll take care of all that. But I'll find a cemetery. Calls me back. He says, all right, Bill, I found a beautiful place, and it is beautiful, Ivy Hill Cemetery. And the owners, the president and his son, they're going to give you a spot right on your you come through these stone gates. And it'll be beautiful. It was deeded never to be used by anybody, just as a plot when you come in. I said, fine, but tell me how much it's going to cost, because I got to get it approved by the board before I give it. Okay. He says, nothing. They're donating it. I said, God bless them. God bless them. I said, but we want a stone. We want a new stone. We want that stone up front. We want a nice stone in the back, you know, something. And we're going to call it America's Unknown Child. Can you find somebody who'll do this? Yep. He calls me back. He says, what do you want exactly on the stone? I said, America's Unknown Child. I said, can you put a lamb on it or something? And leave a space for his name when we find it? He says, no problem. Give me a guesstimate how much it's going to cost. He says, nothing. The Caesar Brothers Monuments, they're donating it. I said, God bless them. And having spent some time in New York, in the Bureau, I said, we want a stone bench where people can come sit, but we're paying for that. You know, I got enough out of them. We're paying for that.
Yeah.
He says, okay, we'll do that too. So then we had the disinterment. They collected some DNA from a tooth, and the sample they got just wasn't good enough at the time. And we continued our investigation. So that's where it was at that stage. We had a ceremony. We reinterred him on Veterans Day. And it was pouring rain. And they have a little chapel there. And we're all in the chapel. And I said, well, it's Fleisher luck. That's a family trait. We had the worst luck in the world. You ever watch the Bronx Tale?
Yes.
And Munch, the guy who they in the racetrack, and their horse is coming up, coming up, coming up. He comes out with 2 tickets. Come on, Rainbow, another horse. They all tear up the tickets before the race is over because
Yep.
he never wins anything. That's my luck. It's raining. Well, it was supposed to start at 10 o'clock. 9:45, the sun comes out. The rain stops, and we had 3 of the chaplains from the police departments from the religions, a beautiful reinterment, and we were hoping maybe somebody who knew something would attend it. We had a little bit of notoriety. You've done that, in a homicide. You go down, you see who signs the guest book, where you go, you see who comes to pay their respects, make sure they did the job right, pay their respects. So we had it all set up. Anybody came to visit the grave afterwards, get a license plate, get a description with Dave Drysdale and his father. So he's reburied, and we start our investigation even further, thinking we have enough of a DNA profile to figure out, something about him. Well, we were disappointed in that regard. And a few years later, it was decided, the police department decided to go up at Ivy Hill Cemetery and exhume him again and use some more creative techniques to collect the DNA, which they did. We were out there. A nice little place where they kept their equipment. It was where we did it, and sadly, wasn't much left even when we first disinterred them, but there was enough to get DNA. The DNA went to the Planck Institute. I think it's in Austria or Vienna, someplace there, and they get a profile. And there's a lot of things happen between this and the good profile that are very interesting. And you might have some questions, like what other things were interesting that happened? Maybe.
Well, yeah, no. I mean,
Excuse me.
it's just from the acts of human kindness, though, right? I mean, all these different
Yeah.
people
Oh,
that
yeah.
that
And if I
donated
can
and got to the
jump,
thing.
if Joe, I can jump to it, the twists in the story. I'll go real quick to the end.
Okay.
After he's identified, I get a call in the Drysdale. He was through the years. We'd go up have a memorial every year. They were so nice. His father passed away, as I said. The day after we had the press conference for the police department, and he was named, Joseph Augustus Zarelli was revealed. The day after, I get a call from Dave Drysdale, who became friends over these years, became a good friend. I hope I never need his services, but we became a good friend. And he says, Bill, he says, I see in the paper this mother, the birth mother, went to Dobbins, which was a high school in technical high school in Philadelphia. My father went to Dobbins. I went upstairs and got his in the attic and got his yearbook. Who do you think signed his yearbook? The birth mother.
Wow.
How
Talk
that?
about talk about coincidence, right? I always say I don't believe in
Right. You
coincidences.
haven't heralded the coincidence here. Frank Bender, who was one of the co-founders of the Vidocq Society, is most well known for his sculptures of recomposing the decomposed, making faces on skulls, aging, progression. He worked with America's Most Wanted. He drew some updated pictures what the boy would have looked like, but he got mesothelioma from when he was in the Navy, being around asbestos in the engine rooms, and he was dying. So we used to have lunch every couple of weeks, or maybe more, somewhere. His office was right downtown near us. And I take him out to lunch. No, I know he's dying. He knows he's dying. He says, Bill, I want to give you something. I said, what's that? I don't want anything from you. Your friendship is all I need. I want to give you something. I want to give you a painting or something. Tell me what you want. I said, it's time. I said, eat. And we're eating. I said, you know what? You know what you can give me? He said, what? He was, very like naive, but he wasn't. He was like innocent. Frank was a very innocent person. I said, when you get up to heaven, because I know you're going there, find out who this boy is. And if anybody can get his word back to me, I know it could be you. I'll try. That's what he told me, and he died shortly thereafter. He had given me he had given me a clue. You know what Frank's middle name was, which I never knew until after he died? Augustus. Frank Augustus Bender.
Wow.
Joseph Augustus. That could have been a clue. 1/3 of the puzzle was sitting next to me if I had known. Tom Augustine. Augustus, Augustine. That was he this case was like a search for the Holy Grail for him. Another clue. I used to patrol when we finally figured out where the father was, the police, we got everything. My mother and her brother and grandfather, my grandfather had a fruit store 2 blocks away from where birth father lived. I patrolled that area as a policeman.
Yeah.
How close that connection. That's like quantum entanglement again. Things are very close. You don't even know it. And it just amazing. There are a lot of other amazing coincidences that were involved in this case that just
When you first heard the news, so when we had Mr. Gillis on
yeah,
Sunday, who helped identify him through the DNA. What when you finally found out his name, what was the feeling? What happened?
exhilaration. As a police officer, when you bring a case home or part of a big case, it comes home. You have this joie de vivre, this joy of, wow, I'm glad I could be part of it. I'm glad that this is something that I was connected to in maybe some crazy way from the time I was a kid. There's I don't want to go into metaphysics, but there's all kinds of ideas that we're all connected in some manner, and there's no such thing as coincidences.
Right.
That's a very important thing in investigation to your
I always
listeners.
say that. I
There's
tell
no
that to
such
all the
thing as
audience.
coincidence. It wasn't a coincidence. He was coming out the back window a day
I tell
before
that
his
to
body was found.
the group of people we have in the chats, and we call them our squad members.
Yeah.
And they know I don't believe in coincidences, and I think I might have convinced them that they shouldn't believe in
They shouldn't
coincidences
believe.
either.
Check it out. You might, it may go to a brick wall, but the coincidences are rare.
Yes. And we quiz them a lot too. I give them quizzes every day
Yeah,
in the posts and things. So we have a very educated group. If you guys have any questions, just put them in the chat, and we'll try to get them as we
good,
can.
good.
So let's talk about some of the evidence that's left over. Now, the Ivy Hill Cemetery, I took them on a tour. I did a video
Good,
on that. So if you've
good.
missed that video, guys, you can go back a couple of days ago and check out the tour and see the stones.
Well,
But
let me just interject some of the other
sure,
things. I think I'm anticipating. People tell me that's a fault of mine. I don't know
go
any
right
set
ahead.
up. I anticipate rather than wait patiently. But
Okay.
during this investigation, we looked at some of the old leads, and one of the key investigators was Remington Bristow. Remington Bristow, they had thought, and we had thought, this carnival family that was going around dropping children off passed away. They died of some abuse or whatever. They left them all wherever the travel went. Their own kids, this family. So that was a thought. But he got a psychic, Remington Bristow. And the psychic said they saw a house with a pond like a shed and a stone house nearby where this kid came from, where Joey came from. So he went around with the psychic, and they went right to this house that was a foster home, about a mile and a half on Morden Road, which was just outside Philadelphia city limits. Had the pond, had this. Uh, Bristol went in there on a tour when they were selling the house and had an open house. And this is Nicoleti was they're all dead. So yeah, uh, Anna Marie Nicoleti was the stepdaughter of Arthur Nicoleti. He ran the home. His wife had about anytime 6 to 9 children there, all ages. And he went in this open house and he saw a bassinet that could have come from that box. So he was pretty sure the kid came from that house. All right. Later on, years later, Sammy Weinstein and I got in the car, rode up there. Place was vacant. Walked around. Sure enough, there was a little pond. There was a little like playhouse that the psychic had seen. Stone. It was a stone's throw from where the Susquehanna Road, where little Joey was left like a piece of trash out, and it was a short dump. And if your listeners, a short dump is where people don't leave their trash out. They have to put it outside or whatever. They'll just throw it some lot somewhere. Eventually accumulates, and it's it's illegal. But that's where he was found, and that's what they call a short dump, with trash and other things. And we walked around, and I said, "This is a connection somewhere." But Anna Marie Nicola, none of the former kids that were in there would talk to us. Would talk to the police. They were sort of protect Anna Marie. Listen to this. She was the stepdaughter of Arthur. When his wife died, he married Anna Marie. Why would you marry her? You love her, whatever. I don't know. But she couldn't testify against him, right? And maybe he was closing. We're thinking all these things. He was closing up loose ends. She had a 3-year-old son that was electrocuted in one of these. You put a quarter in or a dime in those days in front of another Penn Fruit supermarket up in the northeast part of the city where this Susquehanna Road was. She put it in, and her baby a young kid was electrocuted and died. Strange. But we interviewed her. We tried to. Tom went in there to interview her. I think with Joe McGillen in the nursing home, and was trying to get a sample of her DNA to see if that was one of her kids. But they're looking for a hairbrush, anything. And she didn't want to talk. And she subsequently died. Arthur had died predeceased her. So a year or two later, homicide, Sunday, a detective on duty gets a call from a psychiatrist in Cincinnati. And the psychiatrist says, "Do you have a case they found the body of a boy in a box?" I said, "Yeah." "Well, I have a patient, and she says she knows who that boy is and has a whole story, and she wants to get it off her chest." And the detective said, "Well, I'll have the detective, Tom Augustine, get the case detective, get back to you," which he did. And cutting off all the negotiations, Vidocq sent the detective, Joe McGillen, and Bill Kelly out to Cincinnati to interview her. And she told a story that, in reading the story and describing when she was 14 years old, her mother says, "Get in the car." or maybe she was younger than 14. He gets in a car. They drive out and they describe it. And we didn't have all the expressways, etc., in those days. And they try going up the Roosevelt Boulevard, and Bill and Joe knew the direction, go right up to that area. She said her mother went into a house, a big house, handed somebody an envelope, and they gave her a little kid, about 5, 6 years old. And they took her home, and they were raising him in Philadelphia area, in Murray, on the other side of City Line Avenue, on a road called. But before we heard this story, I'm missing a part. Uh, America's Most Wanted did a program on the boy, and Bill and Tom and Joe McKillen, they were fielding phone calls to the Vidocq office from people that saw the show. And one woman said when she was a young girl, she had a girlfriend lived up the street, and they had a child, a young kid. They kept, nobody saw him, and they kept him in that house. And I think that could be your little boy. Where'd you live? Marion Road in Ballackinwood, or Marion. It was right across the city line. Okay, they took her statement. Then a couple years later, that's when we get the call from this woman, who's now a woman, and we'll call her Mary because her name came out, but I told her we wouldn't use her name. I won't use it. Where do you think she lived? On Marion Road. In Murray, right there. How big of a street do you think Marion Road is? 1 block long. All right. But they just couldn't make it. And she said, how did the little boy die? They used to keep him in the basement. Keep him in the basement. The mother was a librarian. The father was a guidance counselor at a high school in the Lower Merion side of the line. She was feeding him dinner, and he choked on the dinner. She went upstairs, got all over himself. The mother took him upstairs, the stepmother, her mother, washed him, cleaned him up, and he threw up again. And she took him out, and she shook him because he was fighting the bath. And she threw him down to the floor, the mother, and hit his back of his head. And he was dead. The husband comes in, according to this daughter, Mary, and looked at it. He said, "It's your problem now." The mother wrapped him up in a blanket, and he was found in an Indian-style blanket, put him in the trunk of the car, drove him up all the way up, same description, up in that area. Got out. She was sitting in the car up front seat, opened the trunk, and a car comes up. On a Susquehanna Road in those days, it was almost like a dirt road. It wasn't a dirt road. It was almost old macadam type road, narrow, not like it is today, all developed. The man who stopped and said, "Yeah, you need help, lady?" Said, "No, I'm all right. I'm all right." So he must have thought she was dumping something, and he went on his way. After the case initially began, and he found the boy, he called the police and made a report. He said it was a woman, gave a description, and she had a teenage boy was sitting in the front seat. Well, if you look at the high school yearbook of Mary, she had I don't know what they call them, page boys, whatever the girls used to wear short hair, and she was 6 foot, and she looked like a boy. So Mary's stories having some credibility. Never could quite bring it anyone, where we could make any clear cut Mary's past, whatever. So after the police get a hold of the new profile, first they got a preliminary profile a year or so before it was announced that it was a uh, he had the child has some Italian parentage, and one of the leads originally, the hat they found at the body, came from Seventh and Oregon, South Philadelphia, which was a Jewish Italian neighborhood in Philadelphia, and they sort of thought that would be the area the father came from. They were everybody we were all wrong. It's West Philadelphia. Anyway, they make the identification uh, through the genealogist. You know, the mafia doesn't kill anyone anymore. They're not afraid of the cops. They're afraid of the DNA genealogists and license plate readers and the eye in the sky and the cell tower ticks. You know, it's but if you look at, well, I don't have to tell you, it's where we've come in solving crimes through this DNA genealogy is amazing. But they still had to make the connection.
Right.
So they came down, and I guess Missy might have told you about it. Uh, it came down to some family members who were reluctant at first to give DNA. And what turned out, which is interesting because we met her, Ben Redmond and I took her out to the grave. She hadn't been there yet. This is after it all happened. Uh, his half sister. Now, this girl had a child before Joey, and she put him up for adoption privately through some private adoption. The half sister and Joey's father was not the same father, another man. When her adoptive mother, she didn't know she was adopted, died. He told her she was adopted. And told her who her mother was, which is the birth mother. So when he died too, and she's a grown woman now. And she never knew she had a half brother. But when the detectives came, if she'd give her DNA, she agreed to. That led to the birth certificate, the birth mother's name, because she had it, the birth certificate, the birth father for Joey's name. But they were still keeping it close to the vest. They were getting static from the father's family because he apparently never knew about this. He was a very prominent person out in a suburb right contiguous with Philadelphia County. And he passed away. So when I found out the name, I did a little research myself. It was kind of interesting. I found that the Sons of Italy had given $500 in the chart. I had the actual chart, the books, to Arthur Nicoleti when he passed away. All right. And you come down, not to I'm getting it wrong, not to Arthur, but to Zarelli, the father, Gus, got his family got for burial. That was part, all the ethnic organizations do that, they'll help out with funeral, of course. Go down the list, Anna Marie Nicoleti was also given $300 a couple months later. And it means that they might have known each other, and that's where the little boy went. Everybody just very, to the Nicoleti family, which sort of reinforces that other. It was like a dendritic wave of leads, like like a neuron, all these different synapses, but they all seem to meet in the middle with little Joey.
Just a couple of questions there. Both KB and Jenny G say, "Do you think this case is ever going to be solved?" I guess it's
I've
a
been,
yes or a no kind of thing.
yeah, yes. I think we all have our opinions, and you know what they say about opinions. But we all have our opinions. I have my opinion. Uh, other people working on the case have their opinion. I think it's solved, but there's nobody to prosecute the smear piece. I think Mary's story was best. He was in being watched by this family. Uh, her mother, it was a librarian, the high school. She accidentally killed him. It was an accident, and he was weak anyway. It's another interesting fact. When he was found, he had a brown substance in his mouth, in his stomach, which could have been the baked beans that they were eating. All the ME said brown substance found in the stomach. Remember, he threw up. They were eating beans, and also he had cut down scars on his leg, and the cut down scars were indicative of some kind of surgery he had when he was a little kid. They sent out the flyer to the AMA, to all the hospitals, could never make the contact. I heard that if somebody is A positive, it's A positive, has that blood. Is it A? I'm not sure, but they have to, if they're young, they have to drain all the blood out. RH negative. If they have RH positive, they have to drain all the blood out and exchange it with different blood, because that's what I thought the cut down scores were. When I met his half sister, I said, "Do you know? Did your mother, was she RH positive? Your birth mother? Everybody?" She said, "Oh, I'm RH positive." So that was a. So he
So
was a sickly kid. His flame went out. That's how I describe it. And then everything else was a cover up.
Lisa Ribikoff says, "Hey Bill, so
Hi,
amazing to
Lisa.
see you."
Good to see you, Lisa. Great gal. Her father,
Yeah,
Dan,
Lisa.
great guy.
Lisa's cool.
Yeah.
I have a question. Does the blanket and the hat and the box, do those items still exist?
Uh, that's a good question. A lot of this stuff Remington Bristol took home, like the mask. He had a mask made, like a death mask. And he'd continue at his own expense for years, tracking leads going all over the country. And I don't know if I've never seen the blanket.
Okay, because the reason why I had asked, and maybe you can tell us for sure, the description of the hat, the blue corduroy hat, they said that
Yeah,
inside there was tissue paper. I guess maybe to absorb the
yeah, right.
sweat or to keep it up. My question would be, if that was still available, would they be able to extract DNA from
I
that
don't
today?
think I think I have pictures of it. I don't think it's still available. I haven't seen it, and we had all the evidence brought over. Uh, I know the reference to it, and then I knew on Seventh in Oregon. I was very familiar with that neighborhood, and
And there was another
I don't
article that
know
I
if
read,
that's a red herring. It might be a red herring. I don't know.
right? Because we don't know if it's actually part of the scene. It was found near the scene,
You're
but
right.
they
It was
did.
found there.
I
It could
think
have
it
been
was
off
also they said
the Peking Tom, who was there to look at the girls and the unwed mother
the
home,
Wayward Girls home.
the
Yeah, the
wayward
Wayward
girls
Girls home.
home. He might have dropped it.
Yeah.
The one whose brother was a priest that made him come forward, who was also a suspect.
Yeah, well, the whole thing about the Wayward Girls area and
Yeah,
everything else that goes along with it. But when I read that about the hat and the tissue inside, I said,
yeah,
"Oh my,
there would still be some DNA,
yeah."
or
And the blanket, did it
skin
have
cells.
grease on it? Do you know? Because I thought I
I
read
don't
somewhere that
know
it
if
had
it
grease.
did. It
Because
was
I
an
was saying that would make sense.
It was
It was
Indian type blanket, and similar ones were observed by Bristol up at the Nicoleti
home
house. Yeah, home.
because they said that would make sense that if it had grease on it, I was I thought it was in the trunk of a car, and then
Yeah, yeah.
with the spare tire and everything else that
Yeah,
goes along with it.
I don't know. I can't answer that. I don't know.
Like I said, the carnival guy and
Yeah, he
his
looked
wife,
good. He
they
looked
were
good.
four. I think they got confessed to 4 murders,
Something like that.
right? And then but
One of our
they
members,
denied. Yeah.
Joe O'Kane, was one hell of an investigator. he still thinks it's that family. Yeah, everybody's got their opinions.
Yeah. Unfortunately, though, this far into the game, I mean, the evidence is going to be,
Yeah, the evidence speaks for in
yeah.
race lips ipse los. How do you say it in Latin? It speaks for
Oh,
itself.
yeah, it
You
speaks
say
for
Ray
itself.
Los. Yeah,
But I did watch one of your interviews that you had done when they were talking about this, and they had just you were at the gravesite, and you had said he's known, he's loved, and he's up in heaven right now,
yeah,
looking down.
yeah. And we go every year at his birthday now, and we're just out here on the February birthday. One of the Eagle Scout put up a historic sign where his body
Mhm.
was found.
Yep.
I mean, people have not forgotten Joey. I know I haven't. I know the guys I work with. You know, we'll talk about him occasionally, and he would have been just a little younger than me.
Yeah, because it would be what, 73 this year, I think, or
Yeah,
74.
like yeah,
It's amazing though. Like I said, every one of us takes a case with us, forever.
yeah,
So I mean, this one here, you could tell it's so many people involved in this. It's
yeah.
amazing to see that. I think a lot of people don't understand that. A lot of times, the cold case investigators, they get a little bit of a grief from the public because they're not contacting, the families and this and that. But
Well,
they carry these cases with them wherever they go.
what people don't understand, I saw as one of my biggest fears when I got into police work, which I always wanted to do, is what would I do if I was around a dead body? Well, being a former police officer, it's every other day. It's
Yeah,
either someone died at home, someone got hit in a car accident, somebody got shot or stabbed. You're dealing with wounded. You're dealing with uh, horrible things, and the saddest things have always been with children.
yeah,
I'll give you a little. People think cops are cold. No, that's a protection. That badge is a protection because you got to look at things. It shields you from looking at that. I got a call. Was working on a wagon. My partner, my now deceased, good guy. I get a call. A little kid falls out of a second story window on Market Street, West Philadelphia. We zoom there, and there's a little kid. He's about 2 years old, laying there. He looked like if you ever saw a person get hit by a car, just laying there, just a little bit of blood and mucus out of his nose. And the parents are fighting whose fault it was that he fell out of the car. Well, we picked them up, put him in the wagon. The mother jumps in, and we drive to the hospital, which wasn't far by, a trauma center, Presbyterian. We take him, rush him in. They put him on the from the gurney onto an examining table, and my partner and I are still watching. The kid is still alive, and the doctor's poking, feeling what doctors do, and the baby starts crying, and the doctors said this little guy's going to be all right. Well, I lost it. I started crying, tears. My partner takes me into another room, and I'm bawling. Well, we see stuff like that every day, and you have to try to hold it in.
yeah,
Sometimes you can't. Sometimes
yeah.
you can't. And
Okay,
whenever it involves a child, or it was
yeah,
just tough.
those are the toughest.
It was just
KB
tough.
says, was there anything found with the body or anything else that wasn't widely reported?
No, just a hat, the blanket, and the which I
The
learned
box,
from Sam wasn't a Sears box, which I thought it was.
J.C.
Or
Penney's.
J.C. Penney's cardboard box, which they believe it's just somebody put them in there afterwards. Uh, if you believe Mary's story, which I believe, uh, the box was probably there, or she might even have called up Nicoleti, and he came down with a box. I don't know. We don't know. We don't know what we don't know is the old expression, right?
Right. No, I mean, it's, evidence matters. And, you
Yes.
know, there was like, when Joseph was finally uh, identified, was there a flood of tips that came in after that? Or was
That
this
they
kind
get
of,
some came in the police department. By this point, after identification, there's another thing to this story. So we decide we're going to put up another tombstone, but Vidocq's going to pay for it. with his real name, everything, real dates of birth, because we knew all this now. So we go up to see Howard Lebowski, who was our board chair of the Vidocq Society, and we take a ride up to see Dave Drysdale at Ivy Hill, see the boy. We go in and we told him we're going to come. We want to talk about, putting up another grave, a real true gravestone, and put his name on the other one. Leave it there. Put the other one on there. So he gets hold of the Christopher brothers. They come up, and we figure out what they want to talk about, what they're going to do. And I said, "What's it going to cost?" It's nothing. They're donating it to the Christopher brothers. So the kindness, of people.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Sinead says, Joe, tell Bill we're all smitten by him. Incredible heart and such a storyteller.
Well, thank you. Is that a nice way to say I'm a BS artist?
No. We'll have you back on for those other stories we were talking about.
Yeah,
but not
I
tonight.
have friends. I have another friend who has a podcast. He said, I want you to come on. We want to hear some of your incredible stuff. I said, incredible. You mean you don't believe me?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, it's
unbelievable stories. Now, this is what I told you. It was true. Every word, to the best of my recollection, it's how it rolled out the case. It was a team effort from day one. And the first detectives, all these old timers that passed, Tommy Augustine, they all brought it home. We were just able to keep it going and the PD was terrific. And they're working hard to solve more of these unknown children cases.
Yeah, because they just I think they just exhumed 8 more kids.
Yeah.
And they took DNA from 8 more kids.
Yeah.
They said these kids were buried right next to Joseph. I think that's what the news had said.
Yeah, they'll be able to. They'll find at least relatives and maybe get close to
identifying them at least.
Identifying, yes.
Yep, I believe Colleen Fitzpatrick said that, we're born, we're given a name, you should be able to be buried with your name. We're going to have Colleen on.
Yeah, she's terrific, and Missy's terrific, and all the guys that worked this case. Just, John Nemec, Joe O'Kane. I think of Sammy and Weinstein and how much he was dedicated to this, and Joe McGill and Bill, the old timers, the real old timer, what you'd call the old gumshoe detectives. They wanted to bring it home, and they did. They brought it home with us. And it's a victory for the citizens of Philadelphia. It's a victory for unknown children everywhere, and it's a victory for people who care.
There you go. And you know what? I think we'll leave off at that very statement because I don't think we can sign off on a better comment than that. Bill, I want to thank you for your time tonight. This was fascinating. You are a great storyteller.
Well, thank you for having me. You're doing a good thing with your show. It's important. People get interested in law enforcement, getting interested in investigation, see the importance of it. Sometimes we're the most visible arm of government, but as people, as human beings, we're invisible. People don't see us as human beings. We're just there to give you a ticket or to ruin your day.
Yeah, we're never around when anything good is going on. I always say
that's right.
Not the fire.
They don't see all the times that you've dug in your pocket and bought some homeless guy a lunch or protected a kid from the neighborhood being bullied by other kids and things that policemen do every day that nobody ever hears about.
Yep.
And just good show. Thank you, Joe. Actually, can I tell them the name association, or do you want to lay off that?
Well, that's for another show. That's for another show. We're going to get into the mob stuff. I want to do a mob show.
Yeah, I got a great story.
All right.
About your uncle.
It's not my uncle. All right, Phil. You hang on one second. Everybody else, you guys have a great night. Thanks for spending it with us. We'll hope to see you soon. Bye, guys.